No matter how much we may not want to admit it, humans are emotional beings. Sometimes we let our emotions get the best of us, as when we say, "I love" out loud. When we purchase a huge pizza to deliver to you after 2 weeks of dating. Thankfully or unfortunately, ourself at 3 in the morning. Emotions frequently kin into our financial lives and might result in a variety of outcomes, some more favorable than others, fortunately when. Use the following money trick that only 1% of people are aware of. Be able to harness your emotions to take your financial situation to new heights. Additionally, if you're brand new to the channel, click the subscribe button below for more. Have you ever considered the reasons why people are so? It's simple to comprehend why a parent might be emotionally tied to their financial assets. Why would we care about someone who is emotionally bonded to their child for so long? Friend, but for years, I just couldn't understand why we clung onto soiled, crumpled sheets of paper to such a high regard before it dawned on me one day that they weren't the actual cash was the only thing that individuals balked at using, but understanding how to. They had to sacrifice a lot of time to obtain the money that was preventing them. Since the majority of people are traders, it's simple to become emotionally attached to money, sacrificing valuable lifetime days to achieve it, and this time will never be recovered. As a result, you're really asking a friend for $20 when you ask them for money to give you a small portion of their life. So what does any of this accomplish? Unexpectedly, a lot when it comes to living a better financial life as you begin to comprehend the role that feelings play in our financial decisions. Begin to understand that advancing financially is about more than just. As a CPA, knowing that numbers are based on human beings means a lot. There are 2 ways to handle money: the logical and reasonable routes. After I describe what each entails, we'll discuss some examples of how the two relate and be altered to give you the opportunity to live the finest financial life possible one. You likely consider making concessions for when you consider being reasonable. Eating 2 slices of pizza, even if you wanted to, is an example of being reasonable. Consume the entire thing instead of being reasonable and accepting a 5% raise at work despite the fact that you would have preferred to double your salary as an alternative. This is what is meant by being reasonable, and we always do it. Being reasonable is another, and for CPA robots like me, it's relatively simple. However, for the most, removing our emotions from our life and making decisions is difficult. It is challenging to make decisions based just on the best outcomes that are perceived. For example, if I eat the same meals every day of the week at the same time of 4 a.m., including on weekends. While not the most enjoyable way to live, this is the most sensible course of action. Can use to accomplish my daily objectives of maintaining my fitness and expanding my. When you conduct business rationally, you put outcomes first and emotions second. Having gained a better understanding of the difference between being reasonable and rational, consider that if financial success is the goal, the latter is the preferable course of action. A top priority to you, I am aware that I have faithfully followed logic for many years. When making financial decisions, I used to take a conservative approach, but as I've gotten older, discovered that the sweet spot resides between the 2 extremes of being excessively logical yet unavoidably slow down your journey to financial success as you let your feelings guide your financial decisions, but avoid becoming overly analytical. Your daily happiness is an expense that must be included in any. Rationality and reasonability are essential components of any significant financial choice. Here are 4 scenarios where these 2 concepts are not appropriate financial wellness. The initial application must balance crucial financial factors. When deciding the very contentious decision, reasonableness against rationality comes into play. Choosing whether to invest your money or pay down your mortgage. Choosing based on money may appear easier on the surface, rather simple, if the earnings you might expect from investing. Investing is the best course of action if your income exceeds the cost of your mortgage. The sensible path, which is typically recommended, but we are robots, and as I have stated, emotions play no role in financial decisions, come into play, such as the possibility that you have always yearned to be debt-free. By age 40, the final item on your list is what needs to be done. Alternatively, perhaps paying off your mortgage is a huge source of worry for you. You worry about how you'll pay it off every night of your life. In the event that you lose your job or experience future health concerns, these feelings, when experience begins to divert our attention from the sensible course and alter our thinking, of the less financially advantageous ones, far more alluring. As a result, a lot of people are paying down their mortgages despite the fact that they could. In other words, your financial decisions aren't only about getting greater returns elsewhere, how they affect your wealth, but more importantly, how they affect how you feel. Next, let's discuss how you feel versus the effects your choices have on your money. It's interesting that once we consider our employment, we tend to feel depressed and anxious. should concentrate on aspects like our compensation, benefits, and available time. Every year, based on the vacation time we have been given, we go to Mexico. Although there is a lot of emphasis on income, if you have ever changed employment for one that's higher earning, and you'll realize that after receiving 1 or 2 paychecks, as I've experienced, everything is the same except for the job itself. In my job, I've truly begun to understand how crucial being. Let's face it, we spend a lot of our time at work, therefore it's important to feel fulfilled by it. Life at work, therefore, securing employment is important unless you want to be miserable forever. This idea right here is where it all hinges, on something that makes you grin. If one wants to communicate logically, reasonability and rationality would be in play. They wouldn't pass up a chance to advance financially if it presented itself. The maximum amount of money, however, that high-paying job might appear with absurd work schedules, a ton of stress, and completing tasks that don't fulfill you. Make sure you're still making a logical decision when this occurs. Financial considerations, but reasonability unquestionably merits a spot in this during a discussion. For instance, it would be simple to claim that taking a position that pays little less but accommodates many of your other needs, including among other factors, there can be a healthy work-life balance, a wonderful team of coworkers, and I realize that some people will continue to demand more work that is connected with values. I haven't been taught that you should always accept the one that pays you the most well. I can assure you, having worked for as long as many others, that getting a job you genuinely enjoy is actually a shortcut to success, which is why, in my opinion, I can tell you from experience and from working with so many people, work you detest because your heart will never be fully engaged in it. You will work to complete the task, but never to the extent that will have as a result of standing out as such. You'll move up the organizational hierarchy. Likely to be difficult, but this client would be far more enjoyable in a profession you love. Continue talking about jobs and the depressing facts that many individuals aren't happy with their work. According to a 2021 Gallup poll, discovered that only 32% of employees are wholly satisfied with their jobs. And if you ask my ex-partners, they would tell you that being unfulfilled is not a positive emotion to deal with on a daily basis. But what happens if you actually only have 3 options if you don't like your job? The second step is to look for a job you like, and the third is to attempt and win the lottery. Make an effort to withdraw as soon as you can from the gross we're still seeing in the retirement from the community with financial independence. It appears that many people now choose to retire early and once more this life. When it comes to choosing, reasonability and rationality are. When it comes to reason, the best options give results at the lowest cost. In order to expedite your route to an early retirement, which is something we frequently see aspiring early retirees consuming ramen noodles in small apartments, they delayed reunifications till after they've woken up, several having retired. It is clear that these financial choices require the most consideration. Using common sense to save as much money as possible in order to retire early, but I've come to understand as I become older that it's logical and not a chance. Everything in life has its own season. For example, when I was a teenager, it was the ideal age to stay up all night playing video games. But at 30, I just don't have the time anymore instead because I've grown older than that pair. I used to be able to tolerate beers with these, but now they give me a pounding. The belief that there is a time and place for everything has a headache that no amount of Advil can cure. There is a time and place for everything in life, and that goes for your money too, for sure. You might strive to save every dollar early in life, but what are you really giving? With pals, it won't be possible because you won't be able to do what you should be doing. Are you making your dates watch the TV on a blank screen after you all have children? You're attempting to claim that purchasing Netflix would cost you $10. Can once more realize that it is ought to be reasonable rather than strictly rational. Although you might need to put in an additional year or 2 of effort, knowing you made the most of, the extra days spent at your work during the years preceding up to that moment will be worthwhile. The last illustration of balancing reasonability and rationality relates to everyone who invests wants to see the highest returns possible, yet we need to ask ourselves, at what price can anyone yield low into a penny? Stock and cross your fingers, but you're also risking the money you've invested. Forward, but in the process you're likely to get hypertension, so when determining which investments to pursue in a reasonable or profit-maximizing manner, I can personally attest that as a long-term investment, outcomes might not be your greatest bet. Personally, I steer clear of solely investing in stocks. Aside from the considerable time spent carefully analyzing specific stocks, simply dislike the volatility that most stocks encounter and want a more conservative approach. I hope you get some knowledge of this money trick and make sure you like, subscribe, turn on bell notifications for more content like this. Thanks for watching.